I had never seen my wife so tired, yet standing tall in the face of such blatant humiliation, right in her own yard. Margaret, with her arrogant smirk and sour tone, pointed her phone at Sarah like she was some kind of criminal. 4 months, my wife endured Margaret's harassment silently, just to keep the peace. But that morning, when Sarah shouted, "I'll call the real police," in the middle of the street, I saw her shoulders straighten, her humility vanish. That was the moment justice began. After 8 months of peaceful living in Pine Valley, we thought we'd found our dream home. I'm David Miller, 36, an accountant for the city. My wife, Sarah, 33, holds a sensitive government position, a detail we never shared with neighbors. To them, she blended in like a quiet city clerk. Then came Margaret Williams, 43, HOA president, self-appointed queen of the neighborhood, who decided to target us. What she didn't know was that Sarah's authority far exceeded hers. It all began when Sarah occasionally parked her patrol car in our driveway after night shifts. Margaret showed up one Monday morning, vibrating with self-righteous fury. "Mr. Miller," she barked, "why is there a police vehicle in your driveway? This violates HOA rules." I explained calmly that it was temporary. Sarah was just transferring her gear after a 12-hour shift. But Margaret thrust a $50 fine into my hand like it was a court summons, declaring, "Rules apply equally to everyone." But she didn't stop there. Soon, she was lurking behind bushes, stopwatch in hand, documenting Sarah's every arrival. She flooded the HOA board and neighbors with emails titled "Urgent Violation," "Immediate Action Required," complete with photos and dramatic timelines. At the next HOA meeting, Margaret delivered a full-blown presentation, charts, maps, and laser pointers, treating Sarah's 20-minute parking like a federal crime. When we spoke up, Margaret interrupted, "The law doesn't play favorites. Maybe you should move somewhere else if you want special privileges." It got worse. Margaret started spreading rumors, whispering that Sarah was corrupt, using her job for special treatment, maybe even a criminal posing as law enforcement. Our neighbors began avoiding us, looking at us with suspicion. Sarah tried to stay diplomatic. "Let's give her a chance to back down gracefully," she said. But then Margaret crossed a line, filing an official complaint to Sarah's department, accusing her of misusing a police vehicle. That night, Sarah came home, exhausted and angry. She dragged my captain into this. Enough is enough. When Margaret escalated to stalking, following Sarah's patrol car, installing a camera aimed at our house, Sarah's patience finally snapped. On a Saturday morning, after a brutal night shift, Sarah tried to grab her bag and change clothes when Margaret stormed into our driveway, shrieking, "This ends today. I'm calling the real police." But what Margaret didn't know was that the real police were already here. That evening, Sarah turned to me with a cold, determined look. "David," she said, "it's time to investigate this HO thoroughly." Sarah wasn't just any sheriff. She had 15 years of law enforcement experience, specializing in fraud investigations. She launched Operation Purple Blouse. Within a week, she uncovered that Margaret had unilaterally rewritten the HOA bylaws, illegally, and had a long history of harassing residents at previous neighborhoods. But the real bombshell was this: Margaret had siphoned over $15,000 in HOA fines into her personal account, never reported on her taxes. We gathered testimony from neighbors who'd suffered under her. Mrs. Rodriguez fined $300 for a broken-down car in her driveway. The Pattersons fined for roses too tall. The Morrisons fined for hanging laundry outside at the wrong hour. The more we dug, the clearer it became Margaret had turned the HOA into her personal ATM. We brought everything to the next HOA meeting. That night, the community center was packed, the biggest turnout in years. Margaret strutted in, clipboard in hand, confident she'd finally crush us. She started the meeting by accusing us of flagrant violations. I stood and asked the neighbors, "How many of you remember voting to approve these bylaw changes?" Not a single hand went up. Then Sarah stood. Calmly, she corrected Margaret's claims about emergency authority under the law. Margaret snapped, "Who do you think you are, a lawyer?" Sarah smiled, pulled out her badge and said, I'm Sheriff Sarah Miller, and I've been investigating this HOA for fraud and abuse of authority." The room fell silent. Neighbors gasped. Margaret froze, her confidence crumbling. "We distributed evidence. Margaret's illegal bylaw changes, her personal account deposits, her tax evasion." Mrs. Rodriguez whispered, heartbroken. "So my $300 didn't go to the playground?" "No," Sarah said gravely. Margaret tried to bluster, but it was over. Mr. Patterson, one of the most respected neighbors, stood and called her a thief. Voices rose in outrage as residents shared their own stories of abuse. Finally, Sarah served Margaret with a court order suspending her from all HOA positions. Margaret's threats fell flat as neighbors united against her. That night, she left the meeting stripped of her power and facing criminal charges. In the months that followed, Pine Valley transformed. Margaret moved away after receiving probation and restitution orders. The HOA adopted democratic reforms, electing a diverse board with full transparency. Sarah launched a free program, Homeowner Rights in Community Associations, teaching residents how to protect themselves. Attendance soared. A legal defense fund was created to support families against HOA abuse. Our story even reached state lawmakers, inspiring new laws mandating HOA audits and limiting unchecked power. Sarah's testimony went viral, and Pine Valley became a model of fairness, regularly visited by other communities. Now, every new resident gets a handbook Sarah wrote, Your Rights and Responsibilities in Community Associations. It ends with this message. The real victory isn't just removing one corrupt president. It's building a community where justice, respect, and transparency are the foundation, and where every voice matters. And that's exactly what we did.